This is day 2 of creating art every day until the Tortured Poets Department album comes out. With this series, I'm aiming to create about 3 new pieces every day, each inspired by the name of one of the song titles. You'll get to see my creative process. I even sketch out some thumbnails for one of the concepts, and I'll be using various art techniques from collage to a bit of watercolor, and of course using the typewriter. First up is track number 16, Clara B. With this title, I figured the song has to be based on an actual person, some woman in history. I did a little research and that is true. This is the name of a silent film actress from the 1920s. So for the concept of this art piece, I knew I wanted to include a woman's face in some capacity since the title is her name. I also wanted to keep it fairly simple, as if it were the cover of a book from the Victorian era. So I went with a centered layout, collage for the woman's face, and then centered the type on the page. Centering type with a typewriter is a little challenging. You need to do a bit of manual work, such as marking the center of the paper with a pencil and then counting the letters, especially when doing multiple lines. You might want to do a thumbnail sketch to make sure you're stacking the right letters on top of each other. This is tedious, but it's a part of the charm of working with older technology versus a computer that will figure all of this out for you. You'll see me add light pencil marks to most of my pieces to help guide where I add words with the typewriter, especially when working with a smaller paper size like this A6 handmade paper. Once your paper is in the roller, you'll need these marks to know where to start your line. With this art series, I've loved the challenge of working with minimal typography. In this case, the song title is only 2 words, but balancing it with the track number, 16, helps bring harmony to the layout. Typewriter ink is delicate, so I have to be careful when erasing the pencil lines. Often I'll go in with a superfine Micron marker to fill in some of the letters, but not too much as I still want it to have a worn, vintage look to it. The next piece is for track number 11. I Can Fix Him. No, really, I can. I must admit, without any context of the lyrics, I'm already making up ideas of what the song might say. It's funny how, when looking at the track listing, you already make assumptions about the songs before you've even heard them. For example, in the first part of this series, I'll link the video below if you want to check out the first 3 pieces I created, but in that video, I mentioned I was immediately drawn to track number 13, I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. But other song titles I'm a little skeptical of and might make me cringe a bit, like But Daddy I Love Him or Fresh Out of the Slammer. For this piece, it made sense to include the human element, such as the profile of a face in this clipping I had. I like how the face is unraveling, which could be a metaphor, a visual representation of someone falling apart, as in the one you're trying to fix, even though we all know that never works. To give the image a bit of depth, I used a yellow watercolor to paint around the edges to frame the profile. The yellow also pairs well with the colors in the profile image. Then it's time to add the type. I wanted to keep the track number, 11, at the upper left-hand corner to anchor the page. After scrolling down a bit, I added the first part of the song title, I Can Fix Him. I wanted to visually separate this part of the song title from the parentheses and the words, "No, really, I can." To create tension with the layout, I typed these words over the yellow watercolor. The third and final piece is for track number 2, the Tortured Poets department. I think I had the most fun mapping out the design for this one and creating it. Since it is a bit more of a complex piece with the typewriter, I started out with some thumbnail sketches, playing around with type and layout. I tried some words in all caps. I double-spaced the word tortured to add emphasis to it, and I also wanted to try layering type on top of each other as if it were a mistake. I also thought about using a brush marker to create contrast to the typewritten words, as well as using a red pencil to create markup lines as if someone were editing the text. Now, with a few ideas in mind, I used a test piece of this graph paper to try out one of the layouts to avoid creating mistakes on the final paper. I forgot to add a center line to the paper, so I counted the boxes and made a mark with the pencil. Again, the centering of text on a typewriter is a very manual process, and sometimes things won't be perfectly aligned, especially if your word has an even number of letters versus an odd number. It might optically not look centered. I used a few underscores to add an underline under the capitalized "the." This is a subtle design element. Layering the type turned out to be the most challenging since you are working with even spaces that a typewriter creates. Instead of only entering onto another line, to really hammer in the effect, I would have to play with the alignment of the paper to stagger the letters on top. But I wanted to keep it simple for this piece, so I overlapped some of the letters while others came before or after the letter above. I forgot that since I had the typewriter on all caps, when I went to type out the number 2, it instead typed out the @ sign. This made me happy I tested the design first instead of making this mistake on the final, nicer paper. Again, I played around with the brush marker and red pencil, but I actually didn't like how much the brush lettering was emphasizing poets, when that's not really the word I want to stand out the most within the title. I added my center alignment marks with pencil to guide me as I typed. I ended up adding a few underscores after department as another design element, which nods to the underline under the word "the." Even though I didn't use any brush lettering, I still wanted to keep the concept of marking up the text in red, so I crossed off the word tortured and circled poets. I'm really happy with how this piece in particular turned out, but I also love how they look in a series of 3. Let me know which one of these pieces is your favorite in a comment below. And if you enjoyed seeing my art process here, you might want to check out one of these videos next.